What's up, guys? It's your boy Zawoki back out with another Chris Watts video today. This one is a little different because it's not about the actual case, but it's actually the war that happened between Chris Watts, not Chris's, Chris Watts' family, Cindy and Ronnie, against Shanann's family, the Ruseks, because of the blood money, which is literally the inheritance, or not the inheritance, but the insurance money / shanannwatts' estate. Now, all that money that was in that fund should have never been split. It should have went straight to the Ruseks. Every cent, every dime. Why? Because, okay, I understand that the Chris Watts' parents technically had some grieving with the grandchildren. But apparently I'm hearing that they got the money, or the half of the money, the sum of the money. I don't even know how much. But the Watts family got some money because they were grieving over Shanann's death. They didn't go to their wedding. They did. Like, okay, we're going to watch this and then we're going to continue this. But before we go further, if you guys could do me a solid favor and subscribe to my YouTube channel by hitting that white bar icon down at the bottom right, hit that bell icon next to it. So when I do post videos like this one, you guys will get that little ring notification that Smokey myself has posted that video. And again, I thank you guys also very much. We're creeping up to 69,000 subscribers. We're trying to get to 100K. So if you guys could do me a favor and subscribe, and then go over to Secret in the Dark. This is the video that we were watching today. So I obviously want to give them their shout out because this is their video. And I want to make it very clear. I am a nerd, also reaction commentary channel. If you don't want to watch with me on this side over here, blah, 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 blabbering while we're watching this, the link is in the description to watch the original video. Because it's ridiculous that I get all these comments that are saying, Zawoki, shut up. I'm trying to hear the video. Huh? I'm a reaction commentary and nerd channel. Okay? If I don't say nothing, then why are you watching it with me? The original is down below. But with that being said, let's get into this video. Sick money grab. Parents of killer dad Chris Watts seeks $450K insurance for the slate. So does that mean they wanted all of it? Or was that the half? That's just sick. Cindy and Ronnie Watts argued they were owed the insurance money from the kid. Who here? Like, I wish I could put a poll below in this video. Maybe I'll make a live video. I'm going to make a live on Sunday about this topic and some other things, but I want to know what you guys think. So come to my live this Sunday. We'll talk about this situation more, one-on-one kind of thing. So Chris took out a $450,000 insurance policy on his wife, Shanann Watts, and daughters, Bella, 4, and Celeste, 3. Prior to their deaths, that policy paid out in full in the wake of their murders, with just one problem. Both Shanann's parents and Chris's parents said that money belonged to them. How in the hell does the Chris Watts parents think that they deserve any of that? Are you kidding? This all came to light after Cindy and Ronnie Watts were named in a civil complaint this summer, which this video came out, I can't remember. Okay. Or the magazine, OK, has obtained a copy of that court document, which was filed by Zurich American Insurance Company. Wow. The complainant explained under the policy an employee of Anadarko was alleged to be purchased an amount of principal sum for the accidental death benefit. Chris Watts elected to purchase the principal sum of $500,000, which should have been him. Chris Watts was the insured as defined in the policy. Chris Watts or shanannwatts, CC, and Bella were all covered persons and covered dependents as defined in the policy. Okay. By endorsement, the policy specified that the principal sum for a covered dependent would be a set percentage of the insured's principal sum. The principal sum for Shanann, as the spouse of Chris Watts, was 60 of Chris Watts's principal sum. So Shanann would be getting less because it's not through, or it's not Chris. So she gets the 60% from the 500,000. If people don't understand. And again, the reason why I'm reading this is because I do have blind watchers that like to hear when I read them out. So sorry, deal with it. For the people that don't like me reading. The principal sum for CC and Bella as dependents was 15% of Chris Watts's principal sum. Okay. I feel like I'm going to get pissed. Okay. By endorsement, the policy specified that the principal sum for the covered dependent would be set percent. Oh, we read that already. Principal sum of $75,000 each for the children. The filing went on to explain that Shanann and the girls met all necessary criteria to receive a full payout, but that Chris would not be able to receive the money. Chris Watts, as a killer, may not acquire the benefits owed for the death of Cindy Watts, CC, and Bella under the policy. Under the statute, states the filing. This is known as the Slayer stature. This could have been a problem, but Chris appeared to have addressed this prior to the policy payout. His parents had other plans, though, according to the complaint. Number 40, Chris Watts was waived any interest in the insurance benefits and directed that all such be paid to Shanann Watts' estate. Okay, easy peasy. A copy of the order date, which was filed on June 25th, 2019, in the probate case for the estate of Shanann Watts, case number 2018 PR 19D, is the attached hereto as Exhibit C. The statute does not address whether following such a direction by a killer would constitute an improper wrongful acquisition of an interest by that killer. Wow. As Chris Watts was no living descendants and no spouse, any declaimed share of an estate would go to his surviving parents. But he slayed his family. The estate would go to his surviving parents. What did that say? To his surviving parents, Ronnie and Cindy, under Colorado Rev State. But he murdered his parent or his family. So they're saying because he can't have, or Chris Watts has waived any interest in the insurance benefits, it goes straight to Ronnie and Cindy? How is that right? The estate of Shanann Watts through Franklin Rusek, has made a claim for the benefits owed for the death of Shanann Watts, CC Watts, and Bellis Watts, which he should. So the Watts made a claim for the same benefits that the Ruseks made. This resulted in the two parties going to court to fight for the money. Oh my gosh. And in the end, the insurance company washed its hands of the entire matter by just depositing the funds into an account that was then paid out to the lawyers in the case. What? On August 18th, 2020, the court issued its order granting bailiffs' unopposed motion to interplead funds into the court's registry for dismissal with prejudice and for permanent injunction directing the plaintiff to pay the policy proceeds of $450,000 onto the registry of the court. Plaintiff paid the policy proceeds into the registry of the court on August 25th, 2020. Then defendants Franklin Rusek as personal representation of the estate of Shanann Watts. Then Ronnie and Cindy, Franklin and Sandy collectively, defendants have reached a settlement in this matter. Defendants request that the court order that the $450,000 paid by the plaintiff into the registry by the court distributed in full to the Grant and Hoffman. Grant and Hoffman shall then disperse the funds pursuant to the settlement between the defendants. Ridiculous. It was not revealed how the money was split between the two families, and the lawyers for both did not return requests for the comments. So we don't actually know. If anybody can read that, yeah, I can't. That's ridiculous. And how much you want to bet the Watts family used some of that money to help Chris? Chris waived his right to the insurance money because he's never going to need it unless it's on his commissary books. So why not waive that? Because now the parents can interject and ask or claim that money. So that money that they're grieving from, it bugs me so wrong that they got some of that money. The actions of their son, the woman that they hated, they get paid for it?
Are tragedies that grip a nation, names that become headlines, families that become symbols of grief. And then there are the stories that follow, the ones too complicated, too bitter, too human for the evening news. This one began after the funerals, after the public outcry, after the cameras were packed away. It began with a document, 8.5 by 11 inches, printed with legal precision. A life insurance policy worth $450,000. It wasn't a murder trial. It wasn't about who did it. Everyone already knew that. There were no questions of guilt. No jury deliberations. Just two families, one grieving the daughter they lost, the other left with the shame of a son they could no longer defend, both walking into a courtroom for something else entirely. One family claimed the policy belonged to them. They had suffered the unthinkable. They had been robbed of their child and grandchildren. They had sat through a courtroom, listened to the horror, and still found the strength to stand. The other family said they, too, had lost. They didn't ask for this. They didn't choose the path their son took.
Okay. But that's why you make sure your kid grows up to do the right things. And
But they insisted that grief doesn't come with conditions. And when it came to the money, they said they had rights. No cameras. No reporters. Just legal filings. Quiet hearings. And beneath it all, a question that no court could ever truly answer. What is justice when there's nothing left to save? This is the story the headlines skipped. The one that never made it to primetime. The war over money tied to death. And the families forced to relive their pain just to claim what they believed was already theirs. You're about
the
to hear every
Ruseks.
document, every deal, every tear, every silence that spoke louder than words. This is the insurance war you've never heard about. And by the end, you'll understand why some stories never find peace, even after the verdicts have been read. Frederick, Colorado.
Well, this one hasn't reached peace because of NK, that's why.
A quiet town framed by wide skies and still neighborhoods. Nothing here would suggest the weight it carries. Nothing here speaks of what once unfolded behind one particular front door. The house sits back from the street, motionless. Shutters closed. A mailbox unused. A place that once held laughter, birthdays, bedtime stories, now holds memories no one wants. It was inside that home where the lives of SHANANNwatts and her 2 daughters ended. But that part you already know. What you don't know is what happened afterward. Let's begin with the people left standing. Cindy and Ronnie Watts. The parents of the man who confessed to killing his pregnant wife and their 2 little girls. A couple who now carried a name most couldn't say without a shudder. They hadn't asked for the headlines. They didn't ask to be defined by the worst thing their son ever did. And yet, that's exactly what happened. On the other side,
And they got paid for Chris murdering his family.
Frank and Sandra Rusek.
Messed up.
Parents who buried their daughter, their grandchildren, and the future they thought they had. They had sat through every painful second of courtroom proceedings. They had heard things no parent should ever have to hear. And when the cameras turned off and the reporters left town, they were still standing there, grieving in a way the world could never fully understand. Both families had lost. But the losses were different. And soon, they'd find themselves standing on opposite sides of another battle. Before the murders, Chris Watts worked for Anadarko Petroleum. As part of his employment, he had a group life and accidental death policy. It was standard, $500,000.
Which goes to him if anything happened to them in a accidental death, car accident, robbery, whatever have you. But Chris is the one that did it. So when Chris and Shanann got married and so forth, the tides got cut off to like Chris Watts' parents and the Rusek's parents. But when a person murders the other person, there's a possibility that person's parents will never get their money. How can you make this make sense? In my eyes, this does not make sense. I'd like to know if this makes sense. It probably makes sense to some legal people. But it does not make sense to me whatsoever.
Zero in case of an accident. Most never think twice about these things. A form you sign once. A deduction from your paycheck. But when death comes suddenly and violently, that policy becomes more than paperwork. It becomes something else entirely. According to the documents, SHANANN was designated to receive 60% of that payout. The girls, 15% each. Together, $450,000. But they were gone now. And the one person legally tied to the benefit, Chris, was disqualified. Colorado Slayer statute made sure of that.
So then it goes to the Rusek, because they are in control of Shanannwatts' estate. Just because he was the policy holder doesn't mean that they don't get paid. Like, he disqualified himself.
You cannot profit from a crime you commit. Especially
He
like
is!
this. Chris Watts, by law, was entitled to nothing. And so, the money had nowhere to go. It hung in the balance. A six-figure sum that no longer had a rightful owner. That's when the filings began. Frank and Sandra Rusek believed the payout belonged to their daughter's estate.
Yes.
They had suffered the greatest loss.
Yes.
They had carried her casket. They had cradled their grandchildren one last time.
I
There was
agree.
no question, in their minds about who the money should go to. But then came the claim from Ronnie and Cindy Watts.
The Watts family didn't even go to the actual funeral. They had their own little ceremony.
They, too, believed they were entitled to something. Their argument was clear. SHANANN and the girls were family. Their grandchildren.
Which, yes, I understand. They're grieving because they're granddaughters. But unfortunately, because of their son's actions, they were disqualified of any of that. Did the Ruseks take care of, or did the Watts family take care of the caskets and how much those were? And did they pay for Shanann's burial, the plot, did they pay for any of that? I bet dang well that they didn't pay for jack crap. The Ruseks paid for all that.
Daughter-in-law. They had once shared Christmases, phone calls, photographs. That meant something. And in their eyes, even with the horror their son had caused, they hadn't forfeited the right to grieve, or to claim a share of what remained. Suddenly, what had seemed like a tragic but settled matter became something else. Two families. Both with legal counsel. Both claiming the same sum. Zurich American Insurance Company, faced with conflicting claims, made a rare move. They refused to pay their side directly. Instead, they deposited the full $450,000 into the court's registry. A holding account untouched, until a judge could decide who, if anyone, deserved to receive it. The war was no longer emotional. It was legal. In quiet rooms, across formal tables it began. The insurance war had officially started. In law offices miles apart, the silence was broken by the clicking of keyboards, the turning of pages, the low tones of attorneys explaining options no family should ever have to hear.
No.
The paperwork was thick. The arguments complex. But the tension? That needed no explanation. Zurich American Insurance Company had made their move. The money was no longer just a check. It was now evidence. Now leverage. Held in a court account, frozen, until a judge could decide who had the right to claim it. The legal filings began to take shape. Motions. Statements of claim. Declarations under oath. On one side, there was Ruseks. On the other, the Watts family. And sitting above it all, a rule both sides had to contend with, Colorado's Slayer statute. The statute is blunt. If you are responsible for someone's death, you cannot benefit from it. No inheritance. No property. No insurance money. In Chris Watts' case, that meant the life insurance policy tied to his employment at Anadarko was out of reach. But the statute said nothing about his family. That gray area became the battleground. The Watts family argued they had suffered a loss, too. They hadn't committed a crime. They hadn't planned a murder.
No, but they showed their distance with Shanann because of the wedding, not being there for their funeral, saying, oh, I didn't like this. I didn't like, they made Shanann into a villain. The things that they have spread and the rumors and lies and then making people hate Shanann because she was different compared to how they grew up. It's like, what?
They had once held those girls in their arms. They had once welcomed SHANANN into their home. That counted for something. Cindy Watts, during a court proceeding, spoke with a voice that trembled not just from pain, but from exhaustion. She said they had lost everything, just like there was a sex.
No, they didn't!
How grief could be measured. How suffering could be.
They can still talk to their son. They can call him. They've had pictures with him. Hugs. They didn't lose like the Ruseks did.
Divided. She questioned why the sins of her son had to strip them of any recognition at all. But for Frank and Sandra Rusek, the mere suggestion that the Watts family might receive any portion of that money felt like a knife-twisting beeper.
Yeah.
Sandra's voice cracked during a recorded, her breath catching in her throat as she tried to say the words. She didn't understand how this could even be up for discussion.
Right?
She had buried her daughter. She had buried her grandbabies. She'd watched the courtroom video. She had read the autopsy reports. She knew what Chris had done. And to her, the idea that his family might walk away with money meant for SHANANN and the girls wasn't just wrong. It was a betrayal. Letters were exchanged between attorneys. Depositions were taken. Statements were filed. Flashed to the court documents, black ink on white paper, words like entitlement, beneficiary, compensable interest. None of it touched the pain underneath. Clips from local reporters began surfacing. Social media lit up. Comment sections flooded with outrage. Strangers took sides. Some said the Watts family had no right to anything, not a dollar,
Nope.
not a moment of sympathy.
Nope.
Others said it wasn't so simple. That parents shouldn't be punished for what their children did. Still, there was a
I could see it different if Sandy, I can't really blame Ronnie, but I mean, he just is following what Cindy's doing. But Cindy despised Shanann. She said it in an interview. They didn't get along. So they didn't attend. So if Cindy was actually in their lives, like, oh, I love my daughter-in-law, she's the best. We go out together all the time. Yeah, maybe she deserves a little bit because she is grieving because she lost a woman that was like her daughter. But no, she hated Shanann. Why? Because Shanann was taking Chris away from her. It's right there. Cindy lost that right when she sat there and said, we didn't get along. We didn't attend. She lost it by what she said.
sex held firm. The money, they argued, should go to Shanann.
Am I wrong?
If Shanann were alive, it would have gone to her.
Yes.
If the girls were alive, it would have been theirs. But they weren't. And the reason for that wasn't an accident. It wasn't fate. It was murder. They reminded the court that Shanann's name was on the policy. Not Cindy's. Not Ronnie's.
Right?
Shanann. The Watts family pushed back, arguing that legal technicalities didn't erase emotional ties.
Oh, sweet.
That grief doesn't have to be exclusive. That mourning isn't a competition. But as each side laid their claim, the courtroom grew colder. This wasn't a trial for a killer. It was a trial for what was left behind. $4 tied to the dead. And underneath the legal language, a single, haunting question began to take shape. Should the family of a murderer be allowed to receive anything connected to the lives he took?
No.
There was no clear answer. But the court would soon be asked to find one. It didn't take long for the lawsuit to catch public attention. Word spread, first in whispers, then in headlines. The families were back in court, but this time it wasn't about criminal justice. It was about money. Zurich American
Agreed.
Insurance had done what many corporations do when the situation gets too complicated, too charged.
They're like, here, take it. We're done. We did our part. We're done. Hey, I got a hole. Hello. My bad.
They stepped back. The company deposited the full
I just bought this
$450,000
shirt.
into the custody of the court, stripping themselves of responsibility. Let the families fight. Let the judge decide. The news hit the Russex like a second wave. To them, the act of filing that insurance claim should have been a formality. But instead, it reopened wounds. Frank Russex appeared in an interview, eyes heavy, voice shaking. We lost everything. And they wanted money? That sentence would be repeated across news stories, podcasts, message boards. For many, it captured the heartbreak and disbelief of the entire ordeal. The mediation began. Meetings behind closed doors. Attorneys reading from binders thick with policy language and prior case law. No cameras. No audio. Just silence. Then arguments. Then silence again. But there was no agreement. The Watts family held their position. They insisted they bore no legal or moral guilt. They didn't commit the murders. They didn't stand behind Chris. They were parents who had suffered too, differently yes, but still suffered. Ronnie Watts told his attorney in a quiet statement submitted to court. We never asked for this. We never thought we'd be here. But we loved those girls. We never stopped. Still, the mediation failed.
Yes, we understand that you love them. But your son committed the crime. So unfortunately, that cuts ties with insurance claim. Am I wrong? I guarantee there's going to be something there like, oh, the Watts deserved it. Like, but why? They didn't lose all. They still can talk to Chris. They can still be there for him. Love him. Send him commissary. Like, how's your birthday? How's Christmas? How's, like...
Failed. The judge gave the
Russex can't do that with Shanann. Yes, and prayer and talk when they can have their connections with the Lord and so forth, but it's not the same where it's right in front of you.
Family's time to consider a settlement. Weeks passed, and then a decision was made. A settlement agreement was quietly filed. No press conference. No cameras. Just black ink, court seals, and signatures. The Resussex would receive $375,000. The Watts family, $75,000. The courtroom records showed no celebration, no closure, only division. That moment became the turning point. The checks would be written. The court had ruled. But the fracture between the families was now permanent. Depositions tell the story best. Sandra's words echo from the pages. This wasn't about the money. It was about respect.
Exactly.
About right and wrong. About SHANANN.
It's not about the money. Yes, it's about the money that was a part of SHANANN's estate. But taking that away is like removing a piece of SHANANN that they should be getting all of SHANANN. But their son committed the crime, which I feel voids their connection to this money.
Cindy's words, more subdued, but etched with quiet sadness. We didn't come for a fight. We just didn't want to be erased. No one won. Everyone left the courtroom with less than they brought in. But for the Resussex, it wasn't over yet. They filed a separate civil suit against Chris Watts. This time, they weren't just seeking recognition. They were demanding accountability. In dollars. The court ruled in their favor.
Oh, this is $6 million.
Damages. And they placed that number as a lien against the house, the very place their daughter and grandchildren had died. The house in Frederick, Colorado became a ghost. Legally tangled, emotionally untouchable. No one bought it. No one dared.
For years.
It went into foreclosure, but never really left the market. It still sits there today, quiet, locked, untouched.
It's somebody lives there. And I've seen pictures, people that have gone by, but do not go there. Just leave it alone. Don't drive by, be like, that's where, you got pictures right here. No need to go there. Stay away. Let the people in there live their lives to the fullest.
A symbol. A scar. The aftermath extended beyond courtrooms. Sandra Resussex withdrew from public life. Diagnosed with PTSD, she struggled with nightmares, flashbacks, and the weight of public scrutiny. Cindy Watts disappeared as well. Fewer appearances, no interviews, no news statements.
She talks
The
to
strain
her
of defending
buddy.
the name the world had already condemned proved too heavy. But online, the war raged on. Comment sections became battlegrounds. Threads of support. Threads of hate. Speculation.
Still
judgment,
to this day.
sympathy. Cruelty. Some blamed the Watts family for asking for money at all. Others called the settlement fair. The internet became the courtroom that never closed. And the jury, faceless and infinite, still hasn't reached a verdict. Because in the end, this wasn't just about legal filings or insurance checks. It was about two families, each torn apart in different ways, trying to make sense of something senseless. And what they found wasn't just
Over a guy wanting some booty.
justice. It was paperwork. It was grief. It was the kind of silence that never really ends. What would you do if the family of your daughter's killer demanded part of her life insurance?
I mean,
Would you take them to court? Would you
yeah,
sit across from them in a legal mediation room?
yeah,
Would you settle? Would you ever
No.
find peace?
no,
These aren't just questions for the Resussex or the Watts family. These are questions for all of us. Was the settlement fair?
Yeah.
Or should the Watts family have received nothing at all? We
nothing.
want to know what you think. Tell us in the comments below. Every perspective matters. We read every word. If this story moved you, if you believe more people need to understand what happens long after the headlines disappear, then like this video, share it, and
This video pissed me off. Not to be bad with secrets in the dark, but I mean, I see the side. Yes, they're grieving, but grieve. You don't get the money anymore. You lost that when your son committed the crime. Was it your fault? No. But did you help? No. You said your hurtful things about SHANANN. You spread things with your daughter that I've been hearing as a rumor. This KK woman and this other person that we're not going to name names. But we'll sit there and scrutinize everything that SHANANN was. And then, give me money. I'm grieving too. I need $75,000 because my son murdered his family. That's how stupid that sounds. Yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts. I hope I don't see like a huge division in the middle. I'm hoping there's gonna be a lot more people on the side of ShanannWatts. Parents should have gotten all of that. I want to know your guys' thoughts. Please put them down in the comments. Don't forget to go over to Secrets in the Dark. Do the same thing if you guys wanted to watch their video instead of mine. I understand. I'm not going to have any hurtful feelings, okay? I'm just watching for those that don't have somebody to watch with, and we can watch together and conversate. So, again, I thank you guys for being here. Please take care, be safe, and as always, keep nerding on, and we will see you guys in that next video.